Well, thank you, Margie. Yeah, it's always good to come back here. I enjoy this group. It's a lot of fun. And thanks for having me back. I haven't bored you to tears yet. We'll work on that today. When Margie and I talked, God, maybe back in July or August about this topic, it was how do we take that next step as an author and get our books where readers can find them? You know, whether it's libraries, bookstores, you know, wherever the reading public is, that's where we want to be. So we thought about this, and I worked with Janice Herbert at Facing the Book and the California Independent Booksellers Association, and probably 6 or 8 different independent bookstores on what they look for when they want to carry a book on their shelves. So we'll kind of go into that a little bit. So we'll talk today about what your responsibility is as an author in bringing books to a bookseller. What to expect from a bookstore or library, because the expectations, I think, at least they were for me, was entirely different than what the reality is on working with a bookseller and making that a business transaction. We'll talk about consignment versus traditional sales. And we'll also talk about events and what you can do to kind of hold a successful event and what kind of event you want to try to pull off. And then we'll close with 10 tips for success in getting your books placed where you want to try to get them. So everybody has a dream of getting, as an author, getting your book in a bookstore on a shelf. I mean, or a library. The first time that I went and saw my book in a public library, it was kind of this giddy feeling, and I looked around to make sure nobody was watching me, you know, be a fool. But when I saw my book in the New York Public Library in Manhattan on 42nd and 5th Avenue, it was like, wow, this is real. So, but you got to keep that there, because it's not easy to maintain. But we all want to see it there. And the reality is 4 million books a year are produced. Wow. 4 million. So you're in competition, really, with those other titles to find that 1-inch slice of real estate in a bookstore. So there are some things that you can do to overcome that 4 million gap and get your book a better shot at landing on the shelf. And a lot of that has to do with what you do next. This is your path. You've finished writing your book. It's the best it can be. It's either traditionally published or self-published or hybrid or something in between. What do you do next? And it starts with the book, but it's not all about the book. You know, a lot of it is about you as an author and how you come across with the bookseller. No matter what, if you've got a big 5 publisher, a mid-list publisher, or you're doing it yourself, you as the author are still going to be responsible for all the heavy lifting to make that book, you know, have a presence in a bookstore or a library. But that approach that you make with that librarian or the bookseller is going to make all the difference in the world. Because, again, those 4 million books, those 4 million authors are also doing the same thing. So they're going to be making their pitch too. So how do you approach a bookseller? Yeah, got to creep up on them a little bit. But there are some things to do, and definitely some things you don't want to do. You don't want to be the used car salesman. I apologize to any used car salesman we might have in the audience. But that turns off booksellers and librarians quicker than anything. So you don't want to do the hard sell push. the bookseller, the bookstore's point of view, think of it from their perspective. I mean, how is this title going to fit in their store? One of the things you realize is not every bookstore is the same. Some have a specific focus on children's books, or YA, or literary fiction. Some, the ones I've gravitated to, have a more presence of mystery, thriller, and that kind of fiction. Your satanic cookbook might not fit in a Christian bookstore. So know the market, know what your book is, and know what that store specializes in. So you want to take a look around and find the right venue for your book, find the right placement for it. It's not going to be every bookstore. So when you do make that approach with a bookseller, you want to be prepared to introduce yourself, what your book is about, and do it in a way that's both sensitive of their time and gives you the best look going forward. There are times not to approach a bookseller, and we'll talk about some of those, but you want to make sure that you get the attention of the bookseller. What all of the booksellers are telling me is that face-to-face push, buy my book, is the least effective method. Go in, make an initial contact, say, you know, my name's Margie, I write a book about, you know, my cat, and here's what it's about. Is there a good time I can meet with you or talk to you about it? And follow up with email. They keep saying that email is the best way to do it. Hi, Karen. They keep saying that email is the preferred contact to make that initial connection. What we've seen, and I've had several booksellers tell me, is there's a line of customers, they're checking out with their books, but an author comes in and they basically push those people aside, go to the front and say, I have a book that you need to buy. You know, that sets the wrong tone right out of the gate. So you're not doing yourself a favor if you make that kind of approach to the bookseller. So set the time that's convenient for them to make that initial contact. Yeah, don't barge in front of customers. Now your approach, they said, don't approach a bookseller about your book during another author's event. That's a very common thing that happens. Because, well, you're thinking of it. I'm here at someone's event, and well, maybe they'll do mine too. So, but they're focused on that author, that sale, supporting that event. And the time that you're pulling away from that to talk about your book doesn't necessarily put you in a good light. It sounds nice. Don't invite them out for coffee. You know, like let's get you away from work. We'll go talk about my book. It sounds nice, but they have a job, they have a business to run, and you're pulling them away from that to talk about your book. So it comes across a little bit harsh. So it's really recommended that before you go to pitch your book to your bookseller, get to know that store, attend events, you know, support other authors that are having events at the store, maybe even buy a book. Face in a Book, for example, has, they're an exception. They have 50 local authors that they have a shelf space for, which is a lot. But they're not unique in that they'll go in and look at those authors and look at their transactions over the last year. What have you bought from our store? You know, are we reserving space for you when you don't support us? So there's only so much space, and if other authors are participating, they're part of that bookstore community, they're more likely to get the support from the store. So think about that. The other thing is really know what your book is. Be prepared to give that elevator pitch about your book when you do get the opportunity to do it. Some of the booksellers are saying, you know, the authors aren't able to answer simple questions like, what genre is your book? Well, it's sort of, it's this mix of genres between, and they can't pin it down. Know what your book is, and be able to give that story, that quick pitch about what this thing that you're trying to pitch really is. So, yeah, your elevator pitch, and we can do a whole other session on how to do that, but it's making that professional, concise, and to the point about what your book is, what you are as an author, what your author brand is, so that they can easily identify what it is you're trying to help them with. So, you've made your pitch to the bookseller, and you're waiting. Don't expect an immediate response. You're not going to just jump up and down, unless maybe you're Karen, and say, yes, I'll take that book. So don't expect an immediate response. They'll get back to you, usually by email. They know their customer base better than we do. They know what sells in their store. You might have a great historical fiction piece, but that's not what that store sells. So it might be a good book, they might enjoy it, but it's not a good fit for that bookstore, which gets back to knowing that store, knowing where you're trying to sell your book. Be prepared to leave a book behind, so as a reminder. Here's my book. This is what it is. Take a look. See if it fits on your shelf and your catalog. And if you have any reviews or blurbs, if you have a press sheet that kind of summarizes the book with a few of your blurbs and a copy on it, you can leave that behind. As another reminder. So, the bookseller got back with you, and they want to do your book and do something with you. There's two primary methods that the bookstores use: consignment sales and traditional sales. And you can be a traditionally published author, but still work with bookstores on consignment. So it's kind of a hybrid thing. Traditional means that the bookstore is going to order that book from one of their distributors, whether it's Ingram, IPG, Baker Taylor, Publishers Group West, Penguin Random House. These larger book distributors will ship the books to the store. Traditionally, the bookstores get a discount that they purchase from the distributors, usually 35 to 40%, 42%. So one of the things that the booksellers want us to realize as authors is there's a very, very narrow profit margin in the bookselling business. So they're not trying to gouge authors. They're just trying to kind of hold on to what they've got and still make a profit, but able to help us. Consignment means that you as the author are going to bring the books to the store, and typically I think we might have a slide on this separately, but the typical consignment agreement is 60-40, 60 the author, 40 for the store. They have costs associated with bringing consignment books on board. It's keeping the lights on. They will do marketing for the books. They will actually do the accounting work, track sales. So there is some workload that goes along with getting the bookstore to have your book on consignment. And usually the consignment agreement will define the number of books and often a duration. So they'll take 5 books and they'll say, we'll have them for 6 months. And at the end of the 6 months, they'll look at it, look at your sales, and decide whether or not to continue them, ask for more, or return them to you. So some of the bookstores you'll find will actually charge a fee to take books on consignment. That's not unusual. It helps take some of the upfront cost out of that work that they have to do. They have to catalog them, enter them in the system, shelve them, that kind of thing. It's not unusual. So if you come up with that, it's just another thing the bookstores are doing. So don't be surprised. And we did talk about the consignment agreement. you'll find, especially in consignment, there may be a wait list. They'll take your book, like Facing a Book, for example, with their 50 local authors. There's a wait list of about 3 months. So there's a lot of authors that want to get into that space, but they're waiting to clear the rest of the chaff out that's not selling. Yeah, not every bookstore will have it, but there's a local author section table. Facing a Book, like I mentioned, has a local author section. So does Book Passage in Marin County. Some of the others do that as well. Now, this came up several times. Authors will go in and not like where their book is on the shelf. So they will move it. Or they'll put it face out. That kind of stuff. Well, yeah, it looks nice for you. Bookstores really don't like that. I found that booksellers are a little OCD about their shelves. There was a kid at one of the bookstores, and he was going on and pushing in every other book on the shelf. That's just, you could see the bookseller just start to spin. So they really do take pride over their shelves. Don't reposition your book. It's not going to reflect well on you. Yes?
So if the owner or manager asks you, do you prefer your book in the local section or in your genre, do you have an opinion as to what is your better shot at good sales?
That's a really good question. It would depend on where you think the most traffic is going to be. For me, I think I'd rather be in the genre section because a lot of people gravitate there. And in some bookstores, the local author section is kind of hidden, more in the back. So it depends on the layout of the store, the traffic to the store, and that kind of thing. Yeah, I'll leave that at that, but that's a good question. Now, if books goes unsold, consignment authors, you'll be contacted, say, hey, we can't move these, come and get them, and they'll close out that consignment agreement. Traditionally published books are often handled the same way. The bookseller will contact the distributor and say, I can't sell any more of these books, I need to return them. So they return them back. And the authors are actually back charged on that. They've already been paid royalties on those. So now they're going to be basically back charged on those and have to reimburse the royalties on that sale.
Just wanted to clarify, when you say consignment, you're talking about someone who publishes, let's say on Amazon, self-publish?
Did everybody hear that question?
Yes.
It was whether or not consignment means sales on Amazon or self-published.
Self-published.
Typically, consignment, the large majority of them are self-pubbed authors. And I wanted to bring this attention because you brought it up and it's a really good point. An Amazon author. That's a sensitive spot with booksellers. Because Thomas and Mercer, Park Row, they publish a lot of books, but they don't publish through bookstores, they publish online. So booksellers look at that as kind of like the competition. So that's a really tough thing to do. Now, if you're publishing through like Ingram Spark, that kind of thing, that's a distributor, so that works. Bookstores can access it, they can order it, but it's not that direct competition that Amazon would be through Kindle Direct and that kind of thing. Did that?
Well, I guess you said earlier, consignment people would bring their own books in. So if I'm an Amazon self-published, I can bring my 10 books in, and they sell them, and they get their cut, and I get my cut. I was kind of going along that vein, but I thought maybe I'm wrong. No, I think you have it exactly. If you're published, self-published book, and the majority of your books are sold, through Amazon or your website, and you get a bookseller that's willing to take them on, yeah, you'd bring them in, and the consignment agreement, and then they would pay you according to that. Okay.
Yeah, so I think you're tracking. We okay? Tracking okay? Okay. So, events. Events are a great way to get buzz for your book. They're not necessarily driven to sell your book. You want to make sure that you go into it with the expectations that, this is a celebration. You're talking about your book. This thing is just off the presses, and here it is. I'm happy for you, and we're going to celebrate this book. It's not necessarily buy all my copies of this book, because that message, it doesn't resonate well. But they can be a lot of fun and effective. But here's some things that you might want to think about. You've got to plan ahead for these things. 6 months is not unusual. It's kind of like planning a wedding. 6 months ahead of time is not unusual to start planning book events. Like again, those 4 million authors we talked about, they're all out there making their pitches for their books. So that event calendar for that store is filling up, and it fills up in advance.
Is this events in the bookstore?
Yes.
Okay. Events
in the bookstore we're talking about here. And it's important to set the expectation of what you want this event to be. If it's a very low-key kind of thing about, I'm just going to be here and sign some books, like you see the tables at Barnes & Noble, authors posted there, that's fine, low-key, low stress. And then if you want to do a book signing, reading, that kind of thing in the store, it's a little bit more involved. The most effective ones have something else going on with it. There's one that I went to in San Diego where they did it at a winery. They had wine tasting as you're going on, so you get people a little lubed up, they buy books, it works. Karen Phillips did a book signing at Face in the Book for her book, her debut, and she did a boxing demonstration. So something different, that gets people's attention. It's if there's a hook about your book that you can talk about, that's what you want to do. If there's an event or some issue or some theme in it that you can bring out, try to do that. But publicity is the big deal here. Every bookseller is different in their relationship with the author and publicity for that event. Some do nothing other than reserve a spot for you, and others will go above board and put ads in local papers, magazines, try to get people to come. It helps them to do to get their customer base built up, but it also helps you as an author. But it's still largely up to you to get that buzz out there for your book and your event. So local papers, magazines, social media, clubs, charities, churches, everything you can think of is, you want to get that message out there. So, and it's actually easier than you think to get in a local paper. Especially up in this area, I experimented with that event that Margie talked about, the Folsom Library. Put in just a detailed thing about what we were doing with Mystery Writers of America, and the local paper picked it up and put it in. So if you don't do it, you might be missing out. They might not carry it, but you don't know. Publicists, I've had them and worked with them and without them. It just depends. It just depends. So we talked about having a theme in mind for your book, your event, and be prepared to talk about that. So if your book is about, if it's a cozy with recipes in the back of it, maybe bring some of those cookies that you have in the book, and get people involved in the book that way. Now, don't expect the bookstore to come in and just take over the event and MC the thing for you. This is your show. They're going to back off, and you need to be ready to pick it up and move with it. If you're going to provide food, drink, some bookstores will allow you to do that. Check ahead of time. Others will cater it for you and charge you for that. So some will do it, some won't. Depends how elaborate you want to get. And publishers or author freebies are always a great attraction to kind of bring more people in, whether it's giving away gift certificates from that store, that kind of thing. But be careful about what you give away or try to sell isn't competing with something else that the store might be having. If they have a jewelry display, for example, you might make nice craft jewelry that's kind of themed with your book, but that would kind of be competing with what they're doing. So you have to kind of think of it from their perspective. I've been to events that felt stuffy and kind of formal and a little snooty. You want to make it welcoming, enjoy it, make it enjoyable for the people who are there. And like we said, it's a fun time. It's a celebration about the book and getting it back out into the world. It's important to check in with the venue at least 2 weeks ahead of time, just to make sure everything's still on track, especially if you're a traditionally pubbed author. You want to make sure those books came in from the distributor, because oftentimes it's like the day before and they show up. So it's kind of nerve-wracking, but you've got to kind of make sure you're tracking that. They probably are, but if you're like me, I want to know for sure they're there. And how elaborate do you want that event to be? Do you want it, do you want to have the food and the drink and, I'll do trivia and that kind of stuff at an event? Or do you just want it to be a simple gathering and people just sign your books and just chat? It's up to you. The idea about doing a thing at the pizza parlor, brilliant. It's great. It's low key, but it gets it out there. And this one. But yeah, don't forget to really thank the bookstore. Everyone made an effort to get there. It's an effort. We're all used to doing Zoom stuff, and it's easy to be sitting in your pajamas, with this much of your face showing. We've all done it. But yeah, people make an effort to go there, so try to thank them for that. So, 10 tips for developing and keeping bookstore relationships. Again, get to know that bookseller before you pitch. Is this the right place for your book? In other words, is this a mystery bookstore, or is it a literary historical fiction bookstore? Are they going to give you the best face for your book? Pitch. The pitch. Have your elevator pitch down for your book and be prepared to use it. This is that 2-sentence, that at most 90-second kind of summary of your book. And just be prepared to do that. It's good practice anyway for your book, but this is where it's going to be very helpful to kind of get that book into the store. This is that same pitch you'd use if you happen to trap an agent in an elevator and say, "This is my book," and you give them your thing. And again, find the right bookstore for your book. Not all bookstores are the same. Some focus on used books, some focus on another genre. Make sure you know where you fit. Know what you want. Are consignment sales or traditional sales? There's nothing wrong with either approach, and a mixture is fine. If you've got, books through a traditional publisher, and you can get them in a couple of bookstores, but a couple of them are small, and you're kind of feeling them out, do a consignment agreement with them. Especially if you're just trying to get acquainted with that bookstore. Our Sisters in Crime chapter, I started doing a series of get to know the bookstore events in the area. We've changed the name a couple of times, but the idea was to establish a relationship with that store before you go in there and try to pitch your book. So you've been to the store, you know what it's about, you can kind of visualize what they focus on, what they specialize in. But it's to get that relationship ahead of time so that when you go in to do that, oh, you've been at my store for events. You purchased books here. Okay, I'll talk to you. Now, this has come up, especially with consignment agreements. And this happened recently at Face in a Book. An author thought they were that special, and 60-40 wasn't enough. They wanted 80-20. And they went home. Yeah, you're not that special. None of us are that special. Find the right time to communicate with the bookseller. During an event is not that time. When they're crowded at the bookstore, waiting on clients, that's not the time. Make arrangements, usually through email. Hey, I'm Margie, I'm an author. Is there a time I can reach out to you? That kind of thing. Make that arrangement that way. They do appreciate that kind of approach. Now, it's important to keep your promises. So if you say, I'm going to bring you a book, or I'll bring you 5 books for this consignment agreement on a certain time, make sure you follow up with that. Because a lot of authors, unfortunately, don't do that. Now, you want to join the bookseller in their marketing efforts, especially if you're talking about your event or your book. Attend their events, support other authors in the community, share it on social media, follow them on their different social media platforms. Get them, be a partner with them. And ask the bookseller how you can help them. I mean, we're asking a lot for us, but what can we do to help them? I mean, during the pandemic, all the lockdowns, independent booksellers especially took a big hit. They weren't able to, have the traffic coming into their stores. A lot of them closed their doors, but some were able to do outreach and delivery and door drops and that kind of thing. And it means a lot to them to have support from us when they need it. One of the things that we do, that we can do, is have, like at Face in a Book, we're restarting the Writers Coffee House group again. So writers can come in and talk about the writing process, that kind of thing. It's not a critique group, but it's a way for us to connect as authors and do that kind of thing. And it brings traffic to the store. But the biggest and the number one tip here, that if you don't walk away with anything else, is don't be a tool. I mean, some of the authors coming into the stores are so full of themselves that, this is my project. One of them actually came to, and I heard this is going to fly off the shelves. You need to buy this, 50 copies, that kind of, and they just were serious about it. And the bookseller just kind of shook their heads. Yeah, leave me your contact information. So you can imagine where that left.
Yes.
But there's a lot of things you can do to start developing a relationship with bookstores, other than just going in for events and your stuff. Most of the bookstores that have been successful over the last couple of years offer a lot of different activities and sessions, and bless you, and that kind of thing. One of the big ones is Book Passage in Corte Madera. They probably have more author events going on through there, all the time. Several on the weekends, several a day. Like every hour they're cycling through things. So you can get in that way. They also offer the Mystery Writers Conference every year. I know a couple of us have been there. Karen's been there, I've been there. That's kind of where I first learned about this author community and got involved that way. Got my agent there. First publishing deal came from there. And now I've been on faculty there, I think, for 4 years at the Mystery Writers Conference. So you're supporting the bookstore, the conference, and it's another way that, like when I asked them to do an event for me, for Face Agreed, they said, sure. So Matt Coyle and I are going to be there December 2nd talking about our books. This is one of the venues that sometimes will charge you, $250 to sponsor your event. Matt and I kind of snuck in. So, speaking of, you're all invited to the launch party. We're doing it Facing the Book this coming Saturday. So, yeah, like we said, you don't have to buy anything. Just come and have fun. Just come and have fun with us. It's going to be Saturday at 3 o'clock. Face of Greed is a new series. It's set in Sacramento and features a new detective, Emily Hunter, and she's a detective in the Sacramento Police Department. It's actually based on an event, one of the first murder cases I worked on. It was a home invasion that went horribly wrong. The homeowner was killed in front of his family. It was pretty tragic at the time. And the three guys that were responsible for that, they were all Aryan Brotherhood kind of members. And they started claiming that the victim drove a lot of this and he owed them drug money and that kind of stuff. That story fell apart pretty quickly. But what we realized was, there was nothing going on in the house other than the guy was a real estate broker and had cash in the house. So they were after that. But when I started writing a book that dealt with kind of a home invasion scene to start with, that crime never went away. So I used it and kind of turned around and, well, what if something was a little off and that victim wasn't exactly who they pretended to be, and there was something a little bit more going on in the story, and that's kind of where it jumps off. But yeah, so far it just came out last week, so it's brand new. Yeah. Thanks. Thank you. The sequel's coming out late next year, called River of Lies, again in Sacramento, following the same detective. But folks have been really good about getting some blurbs and that kind of thing for the book, so I've been very happy with that. But you're very, very welcome to come. I hope I see you. We do have copies over here if you can't, if you're interested and want to do that. But there are a couple of resources. I know this is kind of hard to see, but we can get you these slides. That's a PDF if you'd like them. Resources for the California Independent Bookseller Association. They were helpful in kind of putting some of this together. Facing the Book, Book Passage, and then 3 organizations in particular that are helpful when you're dealing with bookstores and libraries. Sisters in Crime, International Thriller Writers, and Mystery Writers of America. Sisters in Crime, if you remember, when you have a book released, you can submit it to the national organization, and they actually do a push, a broadcast out to all bookstores and libraries. Like, here's the books coming out this month. So it's another way to get your message out there that, your book is out there. It kind of stands out from those 4 million others. ITW and NWA do the same thing, a little bit less focused on libraries, but more just, here's the new authors, here's the new events that are coming out. ITW, even if you don't write thrillers, they do a great job supporting debut authors. So at Thriller Fest in New York every year, there's a huge breakfast. Last year I think there were 70 authors lined up on the banquet stage, and they just had a blast. But all year long, ITW is supporting those authors and giving them a blast about their book. So it's another way to get your message out there. And then Mystery Writers of America, again, the premier organization for fiction writers. They do a lot to help support our community. So I know we covered a lot and we covered it quickly, but questions? Yes?
I have questions about libraries. When you have your book put in the library and it's in the local author section, and of course it's hidden away in the corner and all this type of stuff, how can you approach libraries to maybe fit your book in a way?
Yeah, don't go reposition on the shelf. Even though the Dewey Decimal System that we all grew up on is kind of here gone, but yeah, you could, if your book is in a library local section, I think it's just a discussion with the librarian saying, you know, here's where this would fit. Here's comparable titles. So if your book is similar to, you know, Michael Connelly, Karen Slaughter, you know, J.T. Ellison, those kinds of things, well, this is where it would fit. And then see if they take the bait there. But I think you have to kind of tell them where it fits.
Where it fits.
Make sense?
Yes.
In answer to Catherine's question, also the library buys books with stronger materials on the cover, so they may not want to put your local book in the shelving.
Yeah.
I do have another question. The Gold Country Writers has an anthology that the bookstores around are kindly shelving for us, but we also have it at the visitor center and retail stores. I'm wondering, is that kind of not something an author would want to do? Have your book in a tourist place?
No, I think the question was, is that someplace you wouldn't want to have your book, you know, a tourist center or a retail store? And no, there's nothing wrong with that. I think a lot of, especially self-pub authors, have done very successful sales driven out of, you know, where the people are going to be. If your book features apples and apple harvesting, go to Apple Hill and hit that crowd up. But there's nothing wrong with that at all. Karen.
Kind of on that same topic, the first book I wrote was kind of based on this hotel that's kind of famous in Santa Rosa, but I couldn't use that name because I get sued. But at any rate, they were very friendly, and I said, can I put some books here, you know, in your lobby area with a display and my name saying that this hotel is the basis, and they were really happy to do it. So I mean, was that no, it's Milano. Okay. Yeah. So anyway, things like that.
No, that's great. Yes?
Yeah, since we're kind of early here, I'm curious about, you've got 6 books here. Can you tell us a little bit about your books? And I also want to know, are those true stories in there, or are there true stories and you embellish them or put a twist on them? Give me some information about what you're writing there on 6 books.
Okay, I can do that. But there's 7.
Or 7. Frank's in the way. I missed one.
Elevator speak.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I worked in, as Margie said, I worked in prison for 29 years. I was a hostage negotiator, captain, associate warden. I don't write prison books. That's not what the focus is. But some of those characters and situations just never really went away. So when I started writing, some of those characters started to kind of bubble up. So I used some of those events, like that home invasion, to kind of spark the story and get it going. Another example is At What Cost was when I was working in the security housing unit. It's a prison within a prison. So if you murder somebody in general population, you came to my unit. So we had all these good citizens, you know, prison population in one place.
Yikes.
And one day they were out on the exercise yard, and an Aryan Brotherhood member, excuse me, was stabbing another inmate. So we shot him, stopped the assault, ended up killing him. But we got a call from, I think it was the hospital, saying they're going to donate this Aryan Brotherhood member's organs. And we kind of lived with this guy, this filthy Nazi drug-using guy. Who would want these organs? Kind of creepy. But then a few weeks later, one of our officers' kids needed a bone marrow transplant. So we all got on the registry and did our donation thing. And but years later, the two just kind of clicked for me. So when I started writing the book, it was my detective who was hunting a serial killer who was harvesting his victim's organs. The detective's son needed a kidney transplant. So what did the detective do? Did he make a deal with the killer or bring him to justice?
Ooh.
So that's kind of how I use those situations to, yeah, nice, uplifting, cozy stuff. Yeah, recipes in the back of the book. Yeah.
Oh my God.
But all of those stories are kind of like that. Dead Drop, for example, the first in the Nathan Parker series, is set in the desert Southwest. While I was working in prison, we were doing an audit at the prison near San Diego. So here I am, an auditor from Sacramento, coming into this prison. You expect everything to be calm, quiet, pristine, just everybody's just working, you know, things are just clicking away at the prison how it's supposed to be. It was just frantic. Yeah, something's not happening here, it's not right. So what we soon realized was they couldn't clear their count.
They couldn't what?
Clear their count. And for prisons, that means you should know how many inmates you're supposed to have. It's kind of like a big deal. And they couldn't clear the count. So, you know, it took hours, and they'd go facility by facility, finally realizing it was in the minimum facility outside. The count wouldn't clear out there. So finally they did a picture count, which meant bed by bed, 250 beds, you know, looking at Susan's picture, and then going on and identifying who was, where the problem was. The problem was they had one more inmate than they were supposed to have. What it was, this prison sits so close to the international border that from the yard you can actually look at the border, the wall. And an undocumented migrant was so cold and so hungry, making that crossing up, that he broke into prison for a place to stay. So that kind of stuck with me, that if I was that desperate, where breaking into prison was the best thing going for me, that's kind of where I took Dead Drop in dealing with the undocumented migrant population. So that's kind of how those books get fueled.
Wow.
Yes?
Me?
Yes.
Speaking of prisons, not that I've been in one, but how does one get their books into prisons?
Oh, you could just donate them.
No.
No?
There's a screening process because not every book is going to be appropriate for that population. If it's hypersexual, if it's got escape plans, if it's got weapons, they do screen them. There's a process by, you can donate them through the education department, and they have a criteria they look through. Hardback books are usually not allowed because you can make weapons out of the covers. So usually it's paperback, but you can donate them, and usually through the education department at the prison.
So if you send them your books and they say, no, you can't give them to us, they don't send them back?
Well, I would suggest that maybe you send them one to start with and say, hey, this is my book. This is what it's about. You know, maybe it's a self-help book for how to make a weapon more ecologically, sound, something. But tell them what the book's about. That way, there's very little risk, and they'll probably return that one copy if they decide not to do that, or they'll tell you, yeah, send me 10.
To answer Randy's question too, I dealt with books in the jail system, and pretty basically when we did get the donated books, like your book, I would read through it and see if there was anything inappropriate in it, and if there was, it either went back with you or we put it in a pile to bring it to Goodwill or to bring it someplace else. So it could be either. If you wanted the book back, you could probably check on it and come pick it up, especially here at our local jail.
Thank you.
Yes.
Does an author get any mileage out of getting awards, entering competitions and getting awards? Is it worth, sometimes it costs to do that, and you have to give them a lot of your books for?
Yeah, some of the awards competitions, you got to be careful.
They're phony.
Mystery Writers of America has a thing that they don't support what they call as pay-to-play awards. So I know some of the awards, especially for independent authors, you know, you pay $250 and you send them your books, and you know, you might get an award. If you want to do it, you know, that's up to you. But there are established awards in the literary community that you could probably still get, you know, entered into that competition. The Thriller Awards, the Edgar Awards, Anthony Lefty, Silver Falchion at Killer Nashville. Those kinds of awards are out there. A couple of them, Thriller and Silver Falchion at Killer Nashville, will take self-pub books. So you don't have to be, you know, pubbed by a Big 5 publisher, and you can still get the traction there. But yeah, I know a lot of authors that enter dozens of award competitions, and if that's what you want to do, you know, that's fine. Somebody made a comment recently, we were talking about some awards, and nobody was able to say that they got a big sales bump after an award. You might get some recognition. It's like, oh, I remember that somebody talking about that, but then not necessarily that it was an award-winning kind of thing. So, but it does feel nice.
Yeah.
Other questions?
No, but I'll have a plug for you. I have read your Black Label, I believe?
Yeah.
Yes, excellent. Just excellent book, and I got a hell of an education about prescription and all that stuff. So it was a very good book. I was
thank you.
impressed with it.
Thank you. Yeah, Black Label dealt with the counterfeit pharmaceuticals.
Thank you, yeah.
And the tie back to my career was the Mexican mafia at one point was able to generate state procurement contracts. They were able to get contracts and basically launder their own drug money. The Department of General Services put out a bid, they responded, put up a fake company, and it was a Mexican mafia front. So there's a little bit of a tie-in to Black Label in that, but that's kind of how that one came to me. Yes?
Can you address the issue with us almost living in a bookstore desert? Auburn has the one, and then Grass Valley has them in Colfax. But I had a day where I was going to be coming back from Sacramento, and I had, you know, done the Sacramento bookstores. And I thought somewhere, silly me, between downtown Sacramento and Auburn would have to be a few independent bookstores. And I found 3, and they were all used bookstores, no interest in carrying new books. And so in order to do all this that you're talking about in establishing a relationship, and with Winston Smith, they will carry some local author books, but they don't have a 50 room capacity. He normally says no. How much time and effort and travel do you just pick one store and just make sure that that's the one you're...
Yeah, you hit on a really important part, and that's the appearance of a bookstore desert up here, and we have that. I'm really jealous of friends of mine. Matt Coyle just launched his book this week, and he doesn't have to go 50 miles, and he's hitting like 10 bookstores. You know, we don't have that. So it does take some effort on our part to get out and establish that relationship with a bookstore. Facing a Book is my closest store. It's convenient for me, but that being said, it's probably one of the most effective ones for my book marketing. I know Margie makes an effort. She's a fixture over there at Facing a Book. But you find bookstores that will work with you, and you never know where those bookstore relationships are going to take you. The bookseller at Left Coast Crime in Tucson last year, they were having some distribution issues, so I was helping them, you know, working with them on that. But turns out they're the sponsor for the Tucson Festival of Books. So I got an invitation for next March because they remembered, oh, he wasn't a tool, he was easy to work with. So I'll be there in March in Tucson for that. So you never know where these things are going to connect, but you know, I think where we are, we have to kind of be prepared to, go to the Bay Area, go to Face in the Book, it takes a lot, and yeah.
So if I could follow up to that, most authors, that one in that they would have if they're brand new is, I'm a local author. Well, if an Auburn person goes to the Bay Area, I don't know that most Bay Area is going to consider them local.
Right.
So then, what angle are you using?
Here's something that's effective where, if you're the fish out of water, okay? I'm going to be in New York in January. There's a bookstore there, Mysterious Bookstore, that does well with local authors, but somebody outside of Manhattan is kind of a crapshoot. So my plan is to pair with a New York author. So multi-author events are a big push. If you can get a couple of people together and all talk about your books at the same time. Bookstores like that. They like the traffic. They like the ideas of more than one author coming in. I know Capitol Books downtown has mentioned that. Other bookstores like that approach. So think about maybe teaming up with somebody. Other questions? Yes.
Well, there's a used bookstore that opened up in Cameron Park.
Yes.
And they had Cindy's new books. Would that be an option for, because it wasn't just one or two, they had a pile of her books.
Yeah, there is a new bookstore, and it's kind of a mix, new and used books, and it's called the Book House. It's on Green Valley Road in Cameron Park. They do have books there on consignment. I know the Cindy's was there, Karen Phillips was there, a couple of other local folks had some books there. We're working with them, with our Sisters in Crime chapter. We're going to hold a meeting there. So look at the website. You should see the announcements coming up. So for one of those kind of library get-togethers, we just have a meeting there, get familiar with the bookstore, and help generate some traffic and know what it is. But that's one way of finding out where you can have your books.
If you're going to go to a bookstore, bring your books on consignment, and you don't know what the audience is going to be, what's the minimal number of books you should take with you?
Minimum number of books. It varies by bookstore. Usually, I think the number would be like 6 to 10 in that area. Probably more toward the 6 side, because I mean you aren't really dealing with real estate, and your sliver of it is only going to be an inch wide. So.
Well, this is an event where you're presenting. Oh, you're praying that you're going to sell it.
Yeah, and that's another thing. Expectations. When you do an event, a book signing, you've gone all out. Your wife has made cookies and cupcakes. People might not show. It happens. We did a book signing at at Book Passage in a historic storm. Power went out. The transformer outside blew up. It was just really pretty sparks. So we had like 5 people, there. But we had an event with 5 people.
Yeah.
And I've heard more people comment on, I went to see so-and-so. There weren't very many people there, but they still did the event. They still talked to me like it was a room full of people, and that made an impression with them. Yeah. So, be prepared to do that. But you've got authors like Margaret Atwood, Neil Gaiman, Terry Pratchett. No one showed up. No one. And one of them, I think it was Margaret Atwood, said that one person came in and asked her for tape because she thought they worked there. So it happens. It's part of the business. It's not personal. You'll see accounts of it all over Facebook. But it does happen. So expectations are important. Yeah, bring, if it's your event, bring a dozen books. You can hope that you sell out. But most of the time you don't. But yeah, be prepared. Yes?
Can I maybe just suggest when you do a book event, Jim, take your corgis with you?
Take what, Sherry?
Take my corgis, my dogs. Done that. Yeah, we, let's see, for Black Label at Facing the Book, I took Emma, and last year for Dead Drop at Book Passage, I took her down there. So she, yeah, she's been traveled.
She's a greeter.
She's a greeter, yeah. Not My Cat is a whole other thing. She does not travel well.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, yeah, thank you. Other questions? Well, thank you. Thanks a lot.